Hello, greetings, programmers, and everyone else that's on the stream. Welcome to TCoffeeAndCode for Wednesday, the 8th of September, 2021, flying in the Microsoft Azure cloud. There is no cloud, it's just somebody else's computer. This is, oh, that's right, I gotta do the warranty disclaimer. This is our opinions, subject to change. Yeah. So upcoming TCoffeeAndCode sessions. Next week we have exploring the Amazon Cloud AWS. And then we do have more content coming after that. But we're changing things up a little bit. We're not going to be using GoToWebinar anymore. It's going to be a YouTube stream. That's my plan. I'm still working some of the kinks out on that. So yeah, we'll so do stay tuned to blogs.embarcadero.com. Oh, yes. The host today, we have Ian, who's somewhere, I guess, relative to me, up or down probably right now because I'm showing slides.
I think I'm that way, actually. If people have got the webcams on, I'm pointing, oh, no, wait, that way, that's it. To your right or left, I don't know, one of those.
So actually, my hope is that when I switch to I'm going to be using OBS with the YouTube stream directly, and so I could actually just swap in the video view right here instead of the picture, and so then it'd be you moving.
I shall loom over people like some kind of what's the 1984? That's the one. Yeah, you'll have to run up with a hammer and smash the video.
Okay, so Ian is MVP, poet, author, narrator, developer, born in London, lives in Dallas, Texas, which apparently is currently raining, and Delphi is his superpower.
Indeed it is, yes. Hello, everybody, again. We're back for another TCoffeeAndCode.
Yeah, and then we have Holger Flick, who is currently a disembodied voice.
Hi guys, I'm here. I just don't have a camera today, so I'll just be the voice in the background, you know.
That's yeah. All right. Holger
I can
is
introduce myself real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
So, thank you, Jim. I'm an Embarcadero MVP. I'm also the coordinator for the US region and an evangelist for TMS software. Recently, I used the pandemic, you know, we all can't go out, so what do? You write a couple of Delphi books, you know, so I wrote one about TMS Web Core and 3 more that are really hands-on examples. And some of the examples are also about cloud technology, so that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. And Wagner Landgraf is here, I think. I'm not sure if he's.
He's muted at the moment.
Okay.
Hi there.
Hey, here he is. Sorry about that, Wagner.
Actually, I used the wrong link. I tried to open the link as an attendee, and I end up here as a panelist. What happened?
Oh, congratulations, you've been promoted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be here next week.
Right.
Wagner is the TMS Business Product Manager works on Aurelius and Xdata Remote DB, and also provides training courses and other training around Delphi, and his blogs at landgraf.dev. He's an Embarcadero MVP and been using Delphi since 1995, Delphi 1. Thanks for joining us, Wagner. There we go. We pause that background. I've heard that it's a little intense on the stream. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
All the bandwidth for the background.
Yep. And then, of course, myself, Chief Developer Advocate and Engineer from Embarcadero, longtime software developer. Yeah, just love doing this. Love hanging out with these amazing MVPs and talking with all of you.
Yeah.
So grab your beverage. I've got my industrial sized mug of water. Actually, was going to get a drink this morning and didn't get one, so like a actual real drink. But
I have to say, Jim, as well, whilst we were getting ready, I was renewing my code signing certificate, and I know them fairly well. I've been using them for a few years, K Software, and the guy has just told me he's a Delphi fan.
really?
Yeah, he said he originally wrote he has a tool that does the certificate management. It's slightly off topic about what we're talking today, but
No, actually, this is really useful. Yeah, go ahead. Certificates, code signing certificates is such an important topic.
Yeah, well, I sign all my code, and in fact, all of you should do. If you're not, I have no connection with K Software. It's ksoftware.net. Other than the fact I buy my certificates from them, and they do a good job. But the guy that runs it, he said he originally started selling code signing certificates because he couldn't get them anywhere else. And I have to say, I've not found anybody cheaper. And I have a little bit of a problem with the one this year because of the kind of business relationships I have with people, and their support is amazing. This is not an advert for them. I don't get any kickback for them. It's a genuine, I think they're okay. But he did say he used to be, well, he still is a Pascal/Delphi fanboy, and he's sitting here playing with 10.42 and using the cross-platform stuff. He said it was very interesting. So there you go. So.
Yeah.
A new fan. He's got a nice tool that they write. I think he actually wrote it in C++, to be fair. But you load your certificate in, and then you can drop your executables on and hit a button, and it signs all the apps for you. Very simple. You can do it by the command line, which is how I do it with the build box and things like that. But that tool is very useful if you only have a few assets, or you've got a nice sort of collection of executables or something like that you want to sign. But very cheap. Yeah, very, very useful people. Oh, there you go. The link's in the chat as well. So.
Which I'm going to share in the chat window here as well on code signing, because that's an important thing.
Yeah, and there's actually I'll paste the one from the blog as well, because oops, hang on, if I get that link.
I mean, that's usually not what a speaker or an organizer of this talk should do, but could we just quickly wrap up what the implications for code signing are and what the requirements are? Because I get this asked quite frequently, why should I do it in the first place? Of course, we know what it tells you where the software comes from, but are there hard requirements right now already for service systems, for example, as that you can't run anything that is unsigned in certain situations anymore? Is that already the case? And maybe we wrap that up real quick.
Well, I can answer that question because I seem to be.
That's why I'm asking it.
Yeah, the de facto code signing guy. There's a couple of things we deliver, and when I say we, the company I primarily work for in the UK, we deliver our applications over the internet. We have an activation server, which is written in Delphi. In fact, everything of that product is written in Delphi. From the activation server that manages the activations through the little downloadable stub where the customer places an order and it says, here we go, here's the little stub that does the installation. All of that is written in Delphi, and all of it is code signed. The stub that downloads, if you do not sign your code, when you go to download an executable from the internet, it will get it blocked by Microsoft Smart Screen by default. Now, if you code sign your code, that will not happen. And it depends on the type of certificate you've got. There's two. There's one called EV and one called OV. The OV signing certificates are for organizational validation. They're not quite as bad to get, but you do need to prove that your organization is a genuine company or a genuine individual. You need to provide evidence of who you are. For example, your driving license, if you're an American, an ID, or some letterheads and things like that. because they really do take it seriously. The certificate is validated. They will then call your company with an automated system, and you have to type in a code that they get. So there's a kind of validation. With extended validation, they do even more than that. They check all sorts of records to make sure that you really are who you say you are. And you have a little hardware key that you need to put in your computer. That then signs your applications, your drivers, anything, any asset that's signable, a PDF, for example, with that hardware key has got a, one of these constantly changing encryption things. So if you don't code sign, you've all done it. If you run an application, you'll see coming up in this blog actually, your application will come up and say it's from an unknown publisher, and that your application is blocked and it could harm your device. Not all users are sophisticated enough to actually understand which bits to click to make it run anyway. And some people, if they're corporates, will not allow you to run unsigned code. My wife's company will not, they just say no. If it's not code signed, you can't run it. Don't care how good it is. And how
Actually, I feel very uncomfortable in running an installer that is not code signed. Unless I'm really sure that it's from a source that I know. Even then, I'm afraid because it might be tempered or something like that.
Exactly.
But I'd like to ask you, are you using EV certificates or
I'm
OV?
using OV.
Because we had lots of problems with our certificates at TMS Software. It's because Microsoft wait a minute. Microsoft has made it stricter for the certificates recently. I don't remember the technical details, but I believe the certificates should be more EV or something like that for drivers, that's for sure. But they were enforcing a higher level of certificates, and it's a nightmare here. At least for the certificates we got, we had to use USB tokens.
Yeah,
to use
that's
the certificates.
a problem. Yeah.
And it's a nightmare because it doesn't work with the VM. I had to build an Nextdata server in my physical machine to sign the certificates via HTTP because I couldn't make the USB tokens to work in the virtual machines. It's unbelievable how they make it difficult for deployment, for automatic deployment, for example.
Well, the trouble is that they currently don't have a widely available alternative technology for EV, and I totally agree. The EV hardware token is painful because one of our regular guys that I see on Twitter, a guy called Stuart, Clarinet, I think his surname is. Sorry, Stuart, I can't remember your name off the top of the head. I know he has to sign his code because he does I think it's healthcare stuff. And again, I'm probably really maligning what he does, but he has to use the EV, and he has a lot of assets to sign. He has found that he can make it sign, ask for the password for the token once, and then it will work for everything. But even so, he says it makes automated continuous integration builds very difficult. And let me just shut my door for a second. For some reason, I have a lot of birds and they're suddenly freaking out in the background. So yeah, so it's a problem. I use OV, and what happens with OV is that the first few times your application is downloaded, it will still get blocked by Smart Screen. And Smart Screen is the thing that comes up when you download from your browser an executable or MSI or anything like that, an installer. And once an undefined number of times it's been downloaded, it will stop doing that, and it will just accept that it's safe. You have to keep downloading and saying, yes, this is a genuine executable. Luckily, we have safety in numbers that we have enough customers that it's very quick for us. It's like a couple of days. But once that's happened with that executable and it's signed with a certificate they can trace, it won't happen again. Once it's considered safe, then it's considered safe all the time as long as it's signed. So that's what has been our experience. We've renewed the certificate plenty of times. But with OV, yes, it's a real pain. There is no way around it at the moment, unfortunately. They do know it's a problem, and actually, even the process of getting a code signing certificate involves Internet Explorer, which is absolutely insane.
Chris Peters asked a great question. Can the EV certificate be installed on the TPM model in the systems? And yes, actually, Adrian from our team of Excel was able to install the certificate in the TPM model. So in his case, the USB was not needed. So it's working, but I don't know what happens if you update your machine or something like that. But
you need to re-import the certificate. Yeah, I mean the problem is that there's a monopoly on who generates those certificates. You know, the certificate signing authorities. Sectigo is like the #1 people. They used to be Komodo, but they changed to be calling themselves Sectigo for some reason. And it is almost a monopoly. But they will do things like if your certificate needs to be renewed because of a change, then you don't have to go through the whole validation process again, as long as the majority of your chain is still approved. Then they can regenerate the certificate for you, and they will do that. But so if your TPM module has to be changed, then they'll redo it for you. I don't know if that's free, but I've never had to do it. but I'm told that it is part of the service. That they recognise that you're buying something that should just work. Now, people get confused between code signing certificates and web SSL certificates, and they're not the same.
They're similar, but not the same. Similar
correct.
idea, but not.
Yeah, I mean, they're exactly the same principle. It's just that you can't use one to work for the other, and you can't use a code signing certificate to secure your web page. And with Let's Encrypt nowadays, there's absolutely no reason why your websites shouldn't have a certificate. If you've got an app that's written in, say, WebCore, TMS WebCore, given that we've got 2 TMS guys on, we may as well name drop a great product, or IntraWeb, which is also does the latest version of IntraWeb also supports SSL. And or indeed anything, like your own web applications. If you use Let's Encrypt have a Let's Encrypt bot that works on Windows, Linux, and all the rest of it. If you use Nginx, I'll let Jim Google that one and pull that up on the screen as well. But Nginx, it's got a very simple mechanism for doing reverse proxies. In fact, I think Holger, you and I spoke about this previously, didn't we? Do something like this in the past, I think. But what that allows you to do, yeah, it's very cool, and it's very easy for a Delphi application to then be serving up HTTP to that web proxy via Nginx. That's actually the wrong Nginx.org, Jim. .org, not .com. Yeah.
Actually, I have to give proper credit because Wagner is the one that pointed out if I develop my Xdata web services and I want to be doing it the easy way, I should just develop the HTTP version and then use a reverse proxy to have HTTPS, because it is easy to hook up Xdata to an SSL certificate with Windows because there's a user interface for us as Delphi developers. But as soon as you go into the Linux world, I'm not so sure of what I'm doing with all those configuration files.
Well, with Nginx, actually, it's not very difficult. The only thing you've got to do is use Vim or Vi to edit the file. Although, of course, if you had Ultra Edit, now that it's part of the Idera family, if you had Ultra Edit, you could edit it on with Ultra Edit as well. But the config file is basically the same whether it's Linux or Windows. The only difference is the paths have got slashes in the opposite way. But I absolutely, if anybody was to ask me as a consultant, what I would recommend, I would say use Nginx for your reverse proxy. It's dead easy. It's like 5 lines. I can post it in a blog post or something like that. Maybe I should do that. You just put these lines in, and any application that you've got that's HTTP can then be outward facing onto the internet with HTTPS with a Let's Encrypt certificate. The Let's Encrypt certificate bot will run as a Windows scheduled task or a crontab task in Linux, or on the Mac, crontab task as well. And it will update regularly. So the Let's Encrypt certificates, for those that don't know it, are completely free SSL certificates. They are definitely recognized by anybody. Anybody that says, oh, it's not the real thing. Rubbish. It's a completely real and genuine, very widely accepted SSL certificate. There's a lot of FUD, you know, from people selling SSL certificates who want you to, you know, buy their very expensive alternative of, you know, $100 to $150 of a web SSL certificate. Details in, and within a few seconds, literally that quick, you will get your SSL certificate back completely for free. You can then use Nginx, put all your Delphi apps or whatever to point towards Nginx, and that's it. After that, your HTTPS stuff works, and that will work for, as Wagner and Holger say, that will work for Xdata or indeed any of your systems out there that need to use HTTPS, and it's a completely free solution. Why pay for this when you can do it for free? And also, why doesn't your website use SSL? Why do you not have that little padlock if you can get the certificate for free? If your web host won't let you do it, with respect, you should look for a different web host, because there's plenty out there.
That's where I'm at. The web host I've been at for years is like, no, they're not compatible with our server, but we'll sell you one for a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
So I am in the process of changing it. Just I haven't done it yet, but it takes a while.
Yeah,
but yeah,
I had that problem too. I don't want to name drop some companies, because you know, I'm very much, I believe that the advice I give should be completely independent of people bribing me, if you see what I mean, or coercing me, or giving me a favor to say things, because I want what I say to be genuine from what my experiences are. That's why I'm an MVP. I believe that just reshare my knowledge. So my advice is that I use DreamHost, for example, as one of the people. They definitely do free SSL certificates. They're not the only ones. There's plenty of others out there. Some of the bigger hosts, well-known hosts whose names I don't want to be horrible, they charge quite a lot of money, and I just think it's, in this day and age, it's pretty outrageous. Let's Encrypt have ruined their business model. Sorry, but they have. You know, and by the way, Let's Encrypt are backed by a lot of people, Google and Microsoft and a few others. So,
yeah.
You know,
now there is, if I understand correctly, there just like there's the EV and OV certificates for code signing, there is effectively tiers for SSL certificates, but generally speaking, they're not something that most people worry about. You know, an SSL certificate is an SSL certificate. There's not as much of a difference you're going to run into like you do with the EV versus OV on code signing. So, you know, like if you're a bank, you might want to go with something beyond the Let's Encrypt It certificate. But generally speaking, for 99% of the web traffic, Let's Encrypt is a perfectly valid.
Yeah. I mean, if you are the BBC or ABC News or something like that, then you've got a very complicated infrastructure that probably has, you know, content delivery networks and things like that. This is not what Let's Encrypt is designed for. You know, if you are, as you say, a bank, it's probably very similar. You've got all sorts of, you know, very complicated hardware firewalls and traffic shaping and, you know, attack mitigation and all the rest of it. In which case, again, Let's Encrypt is not for you. But the majority of people we have got on the questions at the moment are probably not of that ilk, and Let's Encrypt is going to be absolutely fine. I can tell you, I personally manage or partially manage at least 60 websites, probably a lot more. In fact, so many I couldn't even tell you what the number is, but it's a lot. And some of those get hits of, you know, orders of magnitude more than most people would get. And we have Let's Encrypt certificates on them, and they have got e-commerce carts on them, which are then, you know, Trustpilot. Have you heard of Trustpilot, that check whether your shopping cart is validated and secure and all the rest of it? They do penetration testing of that. It passes all those checks. So, you know, yes, there are circumstances under which Let's Encrypt is not the right thing, but actually majority of the time it's. I mean, we did say one time we would probably do a webinar on on code signing and certificates, but we seem to have gone down that little rabbit hole already by accident.
Actually, there's a couple of people asking that if this ties to cloud, Amazon Cloud. So it does in a couple of ways, right? Because there are, if you are doing cloud services, you need to have certificates, right? If you have your own domain, you need to have a certificate on there. And then also, I believe some of the things, if you're uploading some things to the cloud, they need to be signed too. Is that correct? If to be run on cloud servers?
Anywhere you want to run it, it's got to be code signed. And in fact, I think on Windows 365, which is Office, which is Microsoft's Azure virtual desktops, I think you can't run it unless it is signed. I could be wrong, and someone may come back and correct me, but my wife's company uses Azure virtual desktops. I'm pretty certain you have to code sign everything. So I don't know about Azure directly, but it wouldn't surprise me. You know, there are some very big providers of software, shall we say, who don't code sign for their own reasons. One of those is Heidi SQL, which is a great product. I really like Heidi SQL. I guarantee you can trust it. And it's written in Delphi, and we've talked about it before, and I think I've done a blog post on it. In fact, yeah, I have definitely done a blog post on it. If you click on my, Jim doesn't need to do this, but if you click on my name on that article, you'll see a blog post about it. When you try and download that, that actually comes up and says that it's not trusted, which is ironic because Heidi SQL is probably used by more people on the planet than any other piece of software to connect to MySQL and things like that. And again, this is Microsoft's slightly paranoid wording, shall we say, of that executable, because that executable has been downloaded enough that really, signed or unsigned, they should be able to say now it is safe. You know, if it's not been flagged by some antivirus or something like that by now, then it probably is okay because it's been around long enough. But there are plenty of others like that, that you download the package and it comes up with this yellow box saying, well, this isn't signed and it's probably unsafe, and it's not true. But the way
it's one of those things that you can't know. And the reason that a lot of open source projects don't sign, unfortunately, is that the if it's a open source project, they can't check the keys into the source control, right? And then they can't. So only if one person. So if somebody has, if it's a open source, they have to pay for it. So that's a out-of-pocket expense, right? And a lot of these get sponsored and stuff like that, but still, it's kind of a big deal to consider. But then they can't check it in. So that means one person on the team has to be in charge of that, of managing that and doing the signing. And you know, it's a complication that comes into open source that doesn't fit the open source model without some sort of additional
help. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So there are open source projects that do code sign, but frequently they don't, unfortunately.
Yeah, GExperts is a classic example of a well-used executable where I know Thomas, I think his name is, Holger, correct me if I'm wrong, but he also has problems. He has said before that he you know, it's too much of a task for him because he feels like although GExperts is very popular, it's not his full-time thing. You know, it's not what he does day in, day out. And so the effort involved in trying to maintain the code certificate and what he sees as the expense, which I believe there are open source systems that will provide code signing certificates for free for open source projects. But you know, I totally get that not everybody's in a position to code sign, but if you are selling your application and you're a vendor of software, then you absolutely should code sign. And the minimum should be the OV, which is the simplest way of doing it. It doesn't need a dongle. Really, if you're someone like TMS, which is a big organization with a lot of complicated installs and requirements for signing of drivers and all sorts of things like that, then EV is the thing you should go for. I've never found it necessary for my own software, and we have 10,000 plus people using the software. So, you know, it's not about necessarily the number of people your software gets out to. It's about your exact set of circumstances and the security and validation that you need for it. So,
yeah, and the question that is here in the chat is like, do you really have to re-sign each time you make a change? Yes, you have to as soon as you make a change to the executable. I think there's even a hash in the signature.
Yeah.
So you can,
Well,
that's the sense that you can detect modifications. So if somebody would modify your executable, your signature would no longer be valid. And that's the whole idea behind code signing. And I think this is, hopefully nobody understands this wrong. Of course, you can only do this if you're like me, a single developer, that you include the code signing in your release process if you compile. Obviously, if you have a big company that you work with, Ian, you would obviously not sign that yourself as a developer. You would have a separate code signing at some point before release.
Let me put it this way, my perspective, okay? With the code signing certificates, you don't have to use a manual tool like the K-Software's little tool. You can use MS Sign, which is a application that comes with the Windows SDK developer kit or something like that. I forget exact details.
Correct.
And
Windows
what you
10
can
SDK.
do, yeah, and what you can do is you can add a post-build event into Delphi. And at the end of the build event, when it's a successful build is completed, you can have a command line in there, which is MS Sign / and then some details of the certificate and the password, and it will sign your executable. Now, that is if you're creating individual executables yourself or as part of a team. So this team, there's a guy whose job, or girl, whose job it is to create a web server.exe or something like that, that gets code signed. But you can also do that in a build box. So if you are, as I do, I have a build process that's a bunch of scripts effectively. And what they do is they go through, they get all the executables and pull them down, either pre-built if they're just individual projects, or built on the spot by the build box. That's the purpose of the build box, after all, a known kind of vector for your applications. And during that process, it uses DCC, the Delphi command line compiler, compiles executable. If that's successful and it tests for success, obviously, it will then code sign it there and then. It also virus scans it before it code signs it, and virus scans it before it goes to be built into a downloadable image. And we use different virus scanners to do that as well. More on that in a minute. But the point about the certificate is that it says when this executable was packaged finally as a .exe file and the file's finalized, there is in there a cryptographic checksum and a hash that cannot be reproduced because it uses the code sign certificate to do that encryption. If a virus or someone with a hex editor changes a couple of bytes on it, that certificate is broken, and Microsoft will tell you it's broken. If you take a signed app and try and edit it, you'll immediately get a message from Microsoft saying that the certificate is invalid, and it will tell you that it's invalid for the executable. And in fact, I think it tells you that the certificate is invalid for that particular artifact. If your code signing certificate expires, it doesn't affect your applications that are out there. Because it's the validity of the certificate at the time at which you created it. And that's really what it's about. It's saying that when I write notepad.exe, when I have a Delphi program that creates notepad.exe, that file gets signed by me or someone I've authorized to sign on my behalf, the build box or Wagner or Holger or Jim or someone like that. I've authorized them to sign this code on my behalf because I trust them. And they have got the certificate embedded in their machine. It gets into the key store on Mac and things like that. It depends how you do it. And then they sign it. After it goes off, then it can get virused and it can get hacked and someone can piggyback code onto it, but it'll break the certificate. But at least at the point at which I signed it, that certificate was valid. It gets checked with Sectigo, who are the certificate authority, at the point at which it's signed. Once it gets used in 10 years' time, they can open that app and it'll still run because the certificate is fine. As long as the cryptographic checksum and that certificate match, that application will still run. Now, I can't code sign once the certificate is expired, but at least that application works. So,
all right, we probably got to move on. I know this is an important topic. It is related. You do need to be aware of code signing and be signing, having SSL certificates and signing your code with working with the cloud, but I think we should probably move on now. I do appreciate it, and hopefully there's a few questions which we can try and make sure we get answered real quick. Let's see. I think actually most of the ones that we wanted to talk about are probably been answered. But if you see some, Ian, that you could elaborate on, maybe do that.
Yeah.
I did put a link to the slides in there, but I will update them as well. Well, I'm putting links in the chat too, so some of those links aren't in the slides. Okay, so let's talk about the cloud some more specifically. So these are some, actually, I think these are work in progress. I don't think these are completely finished, but these are included in here. This is just some getting started with Azure with RAD Studio, and there's some links in here for some more information. I will actually jump out. There is a, where's that? No, sorry. There it is. I'll put the link in for this. So this is a webinar from July, such a couple months ago, with a replay here on getting started with Azure cloud development in Delphi. So that is a great place to go check out for more information on that. With Glenn Dufke and Stephen Ball, they know a lot more about Azure than I do, but that's a great resource there. And then he's the one that made these other slides I was just sharing here. So definitely check those out. But if any, so actually, let's take a step back with what is Azure. So Azure is like a collection of cloud services, much like Amazon's AWS. Now, I know, Wagner, you've done a lot with Amazon AWS. Have you done much with Azure as well, or are you mostly an AWS guy?
Mostly AWS. I try Azure, sorry, just for fun, but didn't use it in production.
Yeah, okay. So I found that it's a, and so Google has their own cloud platform as well, and actually
Oracle
probably
is also used.
Yeah, yeah. So what it is the thing though that takes a while to get your head wrapped around is that all of these are a collection of things. They're not just a single project or product or service. It's a collection of services, right? So there's, so for example, here's a blog post Stephen Ball did on Azure Translator Services, right? So that's part of the Azure cloud. It's running in the Azure cloud, but it is not hosting, it's just translator services. So there's a whole collection of these services that are bundled under the Azure umbrella. And there's a lot of different ways, different things you can use it. So depending on what you're using in Azure, the way you do that is going to be different. So for example, CData offers data connections to Azure table data, right? So that's a database, a table of data in the cloud, but that's not connected to like translation services. So again, there's a whole bunch of different things in there. So talking about Azure, you need to be talking about some specific things with Azure that you might be doing with it. So actually, Wagner, what were some of the things you saw in comparison with Azure and AWS? Let's start with that. What's some comparative? What kind of do you see as some of the differences there?
Well, as I said, I've not used Azure too much, but I think Azure is the choice is made for people choose Azure because of the high integration with Microsoft services. So with if you use SQL Server, if you use .NET, for example, it's very integrated, and Windows itself. So it's and I believe it has some also good integration with Office services. So Microsoft tried to jump in the cloud, and I think they were very successful in accomplishing that. I remember seeing numbers from Microsoft saying that the cloud is already a significant part of Microsoft income, which is a kind of a big accomplishment, given that Amazon was dominating the market as a very earlier than Microsoft. So I believe it's because of the smooth integration with the Microsoft ecosystem. So if you jump it, like we say, Apple ecosystem, I believe there is also this Microsoft ecosystem that you can benefit from if you use Azure. Regarding the services, I believe the core services both have. Amazon has more than 200 services. I believe Azure has a lot of services as well. So it's hard to do a comparison of what services each offer. But I believe the basic ones like virtual clouds, databases, artificial intelligence, things like queues and things like that. I think translation, I think both have options for that.
Yeah. So actually, Microsoft has an Azure versus AWS page here. Apparently, Azure is cheaper.
Well, let me talk about my experience. The impression I had is that Azure, at least I tried the very basic one, which was I launched a virtual server with Microsoft Azure. I had the feeling that it was slower than Amazon one. If you take, and it happens with other providers. If you take the specs, it's the same. It's like 512 megabytes of memory of RAM and 1 or 2 virtual CPUs. But I have the impression, it's just the feeling that the machine is slower. I'm not sure if it's true. I didn't do any benchmarks, but so it's hard to compare. And both have free tiers, like you are mentioning that. I believe Azure has even more free options. Like if you have, I believe if you have Microsoft Action Pack, you have a couple of $100 free for Azure services every month, I believe. I'm not sure if
that is correct per year. Yes, that is correct. You get some credits per year.
Yeah, and I was going to add that my experience has been, so there's a lot that's offered for free, but you have to pay attention, because more than once I've thought I was using something for free, but there was like a checkbox I ticked someplace that then now I'm getting charged something, and I'm like, what? I'm not even using, I was just testing this, and now I've got a bill at the end of the month.
Actually, I had that problem with Amazon. I got I have a very low bill, I believe, for our standards. But suddenly one month we get, I believe, $300 or $400. It's like much more than we use it to pay. And because I have enabled some certificate, we are talking about certificates here. It was kind of if you use a certificate for your web service, it's free. But if I believe I enabled some certificates, whatever, that was very expensive. It's like $200 per month. And actually, I asked the Amazon team, and they kindly refunded me most part of it. But that's not usually the case. So you indeed have to pay attention. I believe Azure has it, Amazon has it, a budget controller, so that's an alarm that you set, which you can define, like if my bill goes above $50 or $100, then you warn me, so I take action. So if you hire some expensive, if your account is spending something, you know in advance, or at least you know quickly, so you can shut down whatever is charging you.
Yep.
If you sign up for the whatever cloud services you do, look out for these alarms so you don't get surprised by the end of the month.
Yeah, definitely enable the budget things, because it's so easy to go over.
Yeah,
especially with virtual servers, because you sometimes just start these things up, or databases. You start these things up, test something, you get distracted, you don't shut them down, and they go by the minute. And depending on what kind of configuration you have, that can get into your money pretty quickly. Even if you have a free package at first, at some point it is no longer free. Use it or don't use it. It is by time, not by usage.
It's by compute cycles as well sometimes. I'll tell you something interesting about money bills, not bills as in legal bills, but there's a really good article by Netflix, which I really should find, and I'll find the link in a minute, where they talk about how they deliver movies to people and how their content delivery network works or worked. Jim, we can see your screen, just FYI.
Yeah, I just shared it. Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I didn't want you to like put some budget up that you shouldn't. Uh-oh, what's he doing? It's going on.
Yeah, this is my personal test account I set up. I thought I had a budget on here, but I don't. But
okay. Well, Netflix, what they do is that it's not Azure, although it wasn't. I don't know whether they do use Azure now, but they use Amazon virtual machines, and they spin up a virtual machine for the customer. I don't know if they've now expanded out into multiple customers per virtual machine, but the engineering technology behind the scenes for what they do is very complicated, because if you think about it, you might want to have it on a phone device, or you might want to have it on a tablet, or you might be streaming it to a smart TV, or it could be a Roku box, or it could be something like that. So he goes into quite a lot of detail about how they do things. And he said at one time he got I think he said he got like a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning where some event had happened and everybody was streaming everything on Netflix, and they suddenly realized that there was just a massive bill that was about to come because of all the virtual machines that got spun up, because all the customers got online and wanted to stream it, and I guess they probably have some custom billing now and things like that. But we have also had similar problems that if you've got a virtual server and it's, you're just spun it up like a Azure machine or something like that, and it's serving up some data, or it's processing some data, and it gets hacked, or someone tries to hack it through a denial of service, if you don't set a budget up, you can suddenly get a bill very quickly, if you haven't got any alerts, for many hundreds, if not thousands of pounds or dollars. And we've had an incident where some person, to be nice about them, they were connecting to some Wi-Fi bridges. So they had some hardware plugged into the Wi-Fi bridge that didn't do Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi bridge then sent an internet connection up to an Amazon server, but it would be the same for Azure, and was, processing the data. And whoever set that up didn't think about security very well, and some smart person got onto that bridge and connected their laptop to the bridge and started streaming movies. So all of a sudden, this Wi-Fi bridge was streaming movies, and it happened to be, because of the configuration, going through our virtual machine. And the virtual machine had a certain limit of data that it would process, because normally it's only processing, small packets of data. And all of a sudden now it's streaming gigabytes of movies. And we found out, when the customer came and said, well, how come I've got a bill for £500 or whatever it was, when I was expecting it to be £8 UK. So, virtual machines like this are very, very useful, but you've got to set limits, you've got to set budgets, and your security is a whole different ball game from when your normal office, where your ISP and your firewall on your router are doing a lot of the hard work for you. Out in the internet, it's anybody's game, really.
Yeah. One other thing, actually, so I have a friend that does the he works at a company that does professional services where they manage like cloud services for people. So like a company needs cloud services, his company comes in and it helps make sure that it manages and is working as they want it to. And he said one of the biggest things that challenges people run into is that if a company is migrating from physical servers to cloud servers, is that before they're like, okay, we have these 25 physical servers, so we're going to make 25 cloud servers and have them running all the time. And that is really expensive. But the key is that you want it, kind of like Ian was talking about, that Netflix spins up the servers as they need them. And that's the key, is that if the server is sitting there doing nothing, you don't want it running. And so you have something that spins up those servers as they're needed so that you're not paying the compute cycles on them when they're doing nothing. So that's one of the things to keep in track is to only spin up the things that you need on the cloud services. And again, it depends on each thing you're doing on here is going to have different different billing attached to it. So you really need to understand that. So it's certainly worth getting a book on whichever one you're using, Azure or Amazon, and doing a little research on that for sure.
Another thing you have to pay attention is to data transfer. I'm not sure about Azure, but I think it's the same. They charge you by data transfer as well. Especially, they don't charge much about the in transfer, which is the data that goes from the internet to your cloud services. But they charge more for the out transfer, which is the data that comes from your server to the internet. And for instance, we had a website in WordPress, and it was getting kind of expensive because the website was getting popular. So we had lots of visitors, and we made the mistake to put some installer to be downloaded from the WordPress. So people were downloading our installer, which is big file. So lots of people downloading. We got easily by the end of the month terabytes being downloaded. So that was kind of expensive. So you also have to pay attention to that. So the data transfer, try to minimize or pay attention to it. Don't do the mistakes that we did, for example, to put a file to be downloaded from the cloud server. So we pay more for the transfer. So we move it to a cheaper service only for the download, and it got cheaper.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, is that you have your solution in the cloud is going to have multiple parts to it. So you're going to have the so the files that you're providing for download can have different, there's I can't remember what they're called on Azure, but there's some places you can put files that are for files that don't change very often, for example, and those are cheaper bandwidth transfers. And so your installer, you want to put there, right? And then there's or there may be a CDN type service they offer where it replicates your data on servers in multiple locations. But then there are other places you can store things that are designed for files that are changing frequently, and those are the most expensive. So, you know, if you're hosting a WordPress service, right, your downloads need to be on the separate one, and not WordPress, for example, is going to be on a instance that has the ability to execute PHP. And so when you're executing PHP, you're actually doing cycles, right? You're doing something. Generally in WordPress, it's not doing a lot, but it's not just a static file. And so that's the most expensive place there. So you kind of have to think about it and architect where you're putting things, and definitely pay attention to your dashboard. That's probably going to be when you start something on there, you're going to be looking at your dashboard probably multiple times a day to make sure you've done it right, because it can go sideways quickly, unfortunately.
I always, for my own personal sites, I always choose hosts that do unlimited bandwidth, because, you know, as an MVP, you put yourself out there quite a lot, and some people are nice, and the odd random person takes offense to you and decides to, you know, do things that are not in keeping with what you designed your stuff for. And what I don't want is to get a sudden surprise bill. So I do put budgets on, but also I prefer unlimited bandwidth hosts for my own things. For corporate stuff, we always choose a big bandwidth based on our projections. We always add a factor more than the biggest projection we could think of, and then set a hard limit on that, so that at certain levels, and I think Azure support this, and Amazon definitely support this as well, where they will send you notifications saying your 50% of your bandwidth allocation, your 75%, your 80%, your 85%. Oh dear, you've gone over. So that you've got plenty of warning. If you're unlucky, let's say Reddit suddenly takes a liking to your site, and you or /dot, because back in the day that used to be the thing that you would get /dotted, and what that meant was that someone on /dot mentioned your very cool application or web page or picture of a coffee pot on the internet, and all of a sudden you went from 10 hits per day to 100,000 per hour, which sounds ridiculous, but actually could happen. And that's when you find out how efficient your web pages are and how big your images are not or are. And then your bandwidth, you look at a gigabyte of bandwidth and it's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. In today's day and age, a gigabyte per month of transfer is actually not an awful lot. So we usually look at terabytes of bandwidth for our big servers. Most of them are cost effective. I mean, you're talking about very small amounts of money. Hosting has become, it's one of those things that's become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper because of the competition with Azure and AWS. But Azure offers services that other people don't do apart from Amazon. And that are things like Azure virtual desktops, where you are literally got a PC that appears out of the Azure cloud, and that is now.
I've used the Amazon versions of those. It's a really powerful thing to have, and you pay for the performance of the hardware, and with those, I don't think you pay for bandwidth on those because you're paying you're paying for the host.
They factor it in and just work it out from there. I think they just let you get away with so much. I think if you started being onerous, but really they know how much bandwidth you're downloading because it screens, so they can tell exactly how much information you're downloading. But Windows 365, which is I think I've got a link up for it somewhere. Let me just Windows 365 is I'm going to put it in the chat window. Is the new version, I think it's the new version of Azure virtual desktops, and it's aimed at businesses. And what it does is it takes a PC and encapsulates it as a little virtual machine. So it's almost like having a VM, but it's on Microsoft Cloud. And everything just appears magically on your machine, and off you go. Now, my wife's company use it, a similar offering from Azure Virtual Desktop. So what they do is you can have all your applications installed on that desktop, go to a different PC, log in, and bing, there's your PC. And it includes, I checked with her yesterday because I knew we were going to be talking about this, it includes all of your stuff that's installed on there. So unlike Citrix Server, which has a kind of pre-arranged library of applications which you pick from, and then you've got a Citrix desktop, this is a little bit more like a personal PC experience as opposed to Citrix, which is more like a PC that is a generic one that's slightly customized for you, and that's the difference. We tested our applications on this and it worked fine. They're Delphi applications. They're written in Delphi 10.33 and 10.42, so I can tell you they work fine. And we also tested them with some client-server stuff that was doing MySQL to a virtual server, which was hosted on an Amazon server, actually, as it happened. That worked fine as well. So, all of this technology, it's new, but it's not new. It's just an iteration or a kind of reworking of what was already there with a better name. It made sense to call it Windows 365, but like I say, it's really aimed at businesses rather than an end user consumer, I think. I guess,
Now, so this is, I looked at this a while ago. They've changed it now. So is this is per user per month? Is there a minimum number of users on here?
No. No, I think you can go from 1 upwards. I could be wrong though.
Because that's actually a really good deal.
Let's just check that. Maybe there is a limit. There might, because usually Microsoft do this. They say 5 people. So you're looking at a little bit more than $31 a month when it's 5 of you. But 45 users. Yeah, see, that's another thing. You'll save up to 16%. They started doing this. Oh, you've already got a license for so-and-so. Well, we'll actually knock that off the price of your offering. So if you sign in with the Microsoft Windows account that has got certain privileges, like I think Exchange and Office and a few other things, then they actually give you a discount because they say, well, you've already got that license, so you don't want to do it again. What they're trying to do is get you dragged away from your physical PC onto their infrastructure so that they've got that repeatable business. Because software as a service, which is what this is, it's really desktop as a service. And you know, that's the way Microsoft wants to go. You know, I'm sure, because you're all smart, smarter than me. I just talk a lot. But Microsoft basically reorientated themselves with Windows 10. And what they did was they went, you know what? Windows is a really good thing for us because it makes us important in the world. But that's not our main revenue stream. And in fact, it's so not our main revenue stream that we need to focus away from the home user and get people using Azure. Because the thing about Azure is that it's suitable for businesses and it's almost a really say yes kind of solution, because they're trying to make it so that they predicted the future. I mean, I still own Bill Gates's Road Ahead book that supposedly, you know, predicted the internet and did a very bad job of it. But it's where they focused on. They said Azure is our future. The cloud is our future. They could see it coming. Desktop as a service, software as a service, that's the way Microsoft are headed. That's why Windows 10, Windows 11 is free. Because if you look at what Windows 10 does, it's becoming more and more cloud linked. You know, did you notice, for example, that Microsoft Office now almost by default stores everything on OneDrive? Why are they doing that? It's not because it's very nice for you, because it is convenient if you've got more than one PC, but also because it's getting you used to the idea of your documents don't sit on your PC, your documents actually sit in the cloud. There are benefits to that. It's a free backup. You know, Microsoft's data centers are probably not going to get struck by a tornado, unlike my office, which probably is. But once you get to the point where you've got a virtual desktop that is completely in the cloud, then Microsoft, you know, it doesn't matter what hardware you use. Who cares if you've got a Macintosh? Go ahead, log in with your Mac, because your desktop is what we provide. We provide as Microsoft and Azure. So this is why Azure is important to Microsoft and why it's important to us as developers, because Microsoft got very, very deep pockets and they are trying to push us into making sure their pockets remain stuffed with cash in a nice way, in a very useful way, but even so, that is their business model. Amazon have different, you know, focus.
The Adobe Photoshop's the same way as the latest versions of Photoshop. You can't buy Photoshop anymore. You pay a monthly fee for it, and then it wants to save all your files in the cloud and stuff. It's so there is some convenience for this, but it is one of those things that if you're actively using it, it's a good deal. But as soon as you're not actively using it and you're just paying the fee for it sitting there, then that's when you really start to get in trouble as far as the costs go, unfortunately. And that's the same thing with these, right? If you're actively using it, then it is a big deal. It's a good deal. So I just looking, this is crazy. This is the services you get in the free. This is not all the services they offer, but it's the free services they offer. And oops, I don't have the screen on pause. But there's a lot here that you can use. So there's their database, Cosmos DB. Oh, and there was a question here about using running Delphi functions in the cloud. And so Glenn covered that in his webinar he did. I put a link in for that. But that's the ability to put you're not putting a full program in the cloud. You're basically writing a function and putting it in the cloud. So you're letting you're defining a single function and you're putting that on the cloud to run, and then you can then call that, and you're paying per execution effectively.
Yeah, I'll just put a link to Glenn's interview today because it's actually gone live on the blog today. We've interviewed Glenn as part of our developers.
Fantastic.
I'm just going to Wagner on camera as well. Wagner, fill your form out.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
He wants to do the interview he's sent you. He needs you to get
I
that
sent the
finished.
form. I'm waiting for, he's like, I will get back to the answers soon. I'm like, yeah, of course you will. Yeah, we'll see how that works. Yeah, wrangling developers to get pieces of paper out of them is tricky. I don't know how you do it, Jim. I really don't.
It doesn't hurt, Wagner. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So it's Johan, sorry. Holger should be saying that name. I'm sure it's German, but maybe not. He's saying beware of inter-cloud connections like talking from AWS to Azure. AIs downloading a backup regularly can become costly. Okay, well, AI APIs are a different thing altogether. I think he's talking about models and stuff like that being downloaded, but most APIs don't really download anything. They just provide results. It's usually by REST. You send a REST request and backups. We've got tons of articles on the blogs about that. Go to blogs.embarcadero.com and you'll see all about it. But I mean, it's a problem. We used Amazon S3 for backups, and every month there is a story in TechCrunch or someone like that about someone using S3 as a backup, which is an Amazon service, but Azure do a similar thing, where they've stored data in an S3 bucket, as it's called, which is just like a little lump of data, and the backup is available to the whole world by accident. Now, I don't know why Amazon don't make it so that by default it isn't available to everyone, but it happens all the time. My local authority around here just got caught with that one. All of their voter data or something random like that was available to the world, which was, as you can imagine, in Texas, that was a very popular thing to have happened. But be careful with clouds. Your security is the first and foremost thing you've really got to think about, I think.
So that actually brings me to a good point. If you're working with the cloud, so if you're managing your program on GitHub, which is, I guess, GitHub is not technically part of Azure, but it's owned by Microsoft, so they have a lot of integrations here. But you don't put your secrets for accessing your, for example, cloud or whatever in your source code. You put it in your secrets area of GitHub. And so this is where you store your keys that give access to it. And so then only you as the manager, the owner of the repository, have access to these keys. And so even though this project is public and I may have other collaborators on there, they can't access the keys directly unless I give them access to that. So you keep your keys separate from that. And so unfortunately, people all the time check in code with their keys in their code for accessing these cloud services. And boom, as soon as you do that, someone's grabbed them if you posted them publicly. So always make sure you're storing your keys in the secrets area of your repository. Even if your project is a private repository, you still don't want to put your keys in there because you may at some point in the future say, oh, we're going to make it public now. And even if you remove your keys, it's still in the history. Someone can go back to your check-ins and find it.
Doesn't work to delete your keys because it's there in the history.
You have to squash. Yep. You have to squash the commits down. They do actually scan regularly for keys that you've included and secrets that you've included, and they do send you a message because I know some of the repo. I'm on a big number of different organizations and repos on GitHub. I use GitHub all the time. And the amount of people that accidentally check in stuff they shouldn't is quite astounding. And I get messages as part of that group saying, "Hey, did you know you've got so-and-so credentials checked in?" And they scan it. They must scan it very regularly because it's usually within a day or two of it going up. I don't know whether they do it when it's uploaded. I'm sure they don't. But the only way to recover from that usually is to actually change the credentials.
Yes.
You know, it's
Yep.
too late by then. People checking in for any of the MVPs that are watching, if you blog for our blogs.embarcadero.com, make sure before you check your code in and make it public that you have taken out your test API keys and things like that, because the number one thing that I do, because I'm nice as another developer, is before those blogs get posted, I strip out anything that you've accidentally left in and put your secret key here, because some very experienced programmers, and I'm sure I've done it myself in the past as well, check in secrets into things like GitHub, and if it's for something like Azure API and it's your test key and you forget about it, and then a month down the line you've got your credit card details stored against it, and all of a sudden now it's active, someone downloads your example program and goes, oh, they don't know what they're really doing with it, but they're taking your example program and now they put it into their own system. They don't understand what it does, but they're using your code, which happens to have your key in it. Your credit card is associated with that key, not with anything else that they're doing. They deploy it out to 1,000 people or something random like that, and you get a nasty surprise when a bill comes through the mail or something that you've completely forgotten you've done. And this happens.
That happens. That happens quite easily, especially when you present at conferences, or if you do trainings, and you have to copy paste them if you don't prepare, because if you do live demos, you can't prepare. So I started using separate files with classes, with helper classes that insert these. But generally, one good thing is, and I think Azure does this too, and it's definitely something that Google offers for their map services and that Microsoft Azure offers for the map services. You can limit the keys to certain domains and certain IP addresses. So for me, that means I have to, because I have a dynamic IP most of the time, at least every couple of days, I have to update it, but I don't run the risk if I ever do a presentation on Zoom that something leaks out, and somebody generates like hundreds and hundreds of dollars in cost. Like translation APIs are exceptionally expensive. Like they go, this well, Ian, that these things go by the word, and that can get expensive quite fast.
Yeah, they decide to translate some great big white paper of 75 pages long and 15,000 words, and all of a sudden,
let's see how good this works with our user manual. We always wanted to have that in simplified Chinese.
Well, people unfortunately do use automated translations to translate documentation. We all know that from having, unpackaged some flat pack or something like that, and it's something random about putting a cat in a washing machine or something, and you're like, what? And you look at the diagram and it's screwing, unscrewing, and they've just happened to translate it from the Chinese into English with an automated tool.
Yeah, as David Cornelius points out, there's also, if you use online versioning systems like GitHub, GitLab, I'm sure Bitbucket has it too. You can enable security for this. Git Guardian is one of them, and sometimes they're not free depending on what you do, but sometimes it's worth paying $10 a month so your repository is protected instead of paying thousands of dollars for your secrets getting up.
Well, Google Maps explicitly starts with, oh, my phone's trying to answer me because I said the word Google. Google Maps, always listening. Google Maps is, by default, is restricted, which is exactly the way I think it should be. So if you want to broaden it out into being more permissive and more promiscuous to other websites, maybe your one website is a feed for other websites, then you actually have to explicitly go in and broaden out that range. And in fact, by doing that, it makes the examples they provide harder to use, but it means it's also harder to accidentally run up a bill. I respect them for that. It's not often I've got a good word to say about Google's business practices, but that is one of them that I've got a bit of respect for, because Azure and people like that don't often do it that way. They just let you run up a bill, and try getting a refund. That's the next thing that's difficult with these services. It can be extremely difficult to go back and say, hang on, I didn't mean this. You've let people use my site, and they say, no, it's your mistake. We'd like our money, please. Ka-ching, we took it out of your credit card. And if you cancel your transaction with the credit card, we'll come and get you. Yeah, not scared of Azure. Nah, they haven't got that much money to sue me, I'm sure.
So there's there was a question about if there's any, so the Delphi does include the Azure API. It is shipped with Delphi, but then there's also some other libraries. TMS Cloud Pak is a great resource for people wanting to build cloud. These are phenomenal components. Includes a bunch of them related to Microsoft and Azure, as well as other platforms. We have Google and Amazon was on here too, isn't it? Let's see, Amazon.
Can I mention one thing about the FNC? If you go to the FNC stuff on the left, FNC Cloud Pak, because I want to point that out. A lot of people are confused. The FNC controls can be used in the VCL, Web, FireMonkey, and Lazarus. So you buy one set, you can use it everywhere. And the new feature that is part of the FNC Cloud Pak is that you can switch dynamically between the services. So you drop for example, if you want to store data in the cloud, you drop a storage component on the form, and then you have a services property where you can select the service, be it Dropbox, Hybig, or all the other ones that are possible that because I'm nervous, don't remember right now out of the top of my head, but there are many.
OneDrive, yeah.
Yes,
Google Drive.
OneDrive, yeah. Google Drive, yes, thank you, Jim. And you can switch between them. So you can decide if you want to give your customers the opportunity to select which one they want to use, or you can develop your software for all of them, depending on which model you want to use because obviously you need a key in order to access these cloud services. But that's something I wanted to point out, that these services can be used dynamically. The same for the translation services. You drop the same component, and then you can switch between the different translation services. And of course, with the FNC maps, you can select between all the different mapping services that are out there. Also dynamically at runtime, you can switch the different services that you want to use.
That's really cool. I'm actually thinking, so I've looked at a few services that will let me combine all my cloud services into one, storage into one, but none of them are exactly what I want. And I'm thinking, I'm just going to get FNC Cloud Pak and do that myself.
Yeah, and
so I just have one bucket and it just puts it everywhere.
Yeah, it's the same methods. You have move, you have delete, you have copy, and it's really an abstract way to develop against the cloud, because you don't need to know what the customer selects, and obviously you can include that into your user interface, that the user selects it, or you can also make it part of a configuration file. It is really up to you how you model it.
Yeah, TMS All Access is the package you need. We may as well, we got them on the page, that you know, you get everything then, and the FNCs. I like the FNC stuff, I have to say. I've made no secret before of being a big fan of TMS. It's a bit TMS heavy here because we've got Wagner, who's obviously a TMS guy as well, and Holger, but you know, they do good services, and these cloud packs are very useful. With all these component vendors, and TMS being the one that's on the screen at the moment, it just saves you so much time and effort. That's the really great thing, because I keep telling people I'm very lazy. I just want the components to do everything. It's what I like about Delphi. You know, I'd like a program to do this. The first thing you do is Google to see which components are available to do it for me, and then I just set the properties and go, I've done it. I'll have the money now, please.
You know, even if Holger and Wagner went on here, I'd still say, yeah, go out to TMS and check out their stuff. Honestly, you get, and I love TMS. TMS is great. DevExpress has great components, lots of other components. But realistically, you should have all access or one of these from one of these amazing tech partners, because whatever program you're going to build, 90% of it is boop, 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 and you're done. You know, the power in the grids that you get there, it's like, I need because there's so many people out there that are using Excel for something that Excel is not meant for. And you can drop one of these powerful grids on there, and you've replicated everything Excel does, and now you can make it work like it's supposed to work for what they're doing with it. And it's, man, I get goosebumps thinking about it. It's just so cool.
Yeah.
Realistically, that's one of the things I love about the Delphi ecosystem is this component model. It really is the original low code, right? Except it lets you write all the code you want to write to do everything. So
I would like to give an example, Jim, that is just as fascinating, because just yesterday I downloaded a DBF file, which is a DBase database, and obviously, and then I simply dropped a couple of FireDeck connections and a batch move component on a form, and I was able to, without running the application, just as at design time, you're able with Delphi, without writing a single line of code, to convert this DBase file, which is, it is at least, it has been created as part of a shape file. It was like created 20, 30 years ago. And you have now, I was able to create a SQLite, Firebird, Interbase, Microsoft SQL. So all the problems were gone without writing a single line of code. And of course, as the design time can be compiled, you would be able to provide this as a tool to your customer. Hey, simply convert your old databases into a new format and you're done, you know? And there's simply no other tool available that gives you that comfort to do it in a visual way with a form designer or data module, you know? It's just amazing.
Well, Jim said the magic word, the original low code, and I know that sounds like that's some kind of like sales phrase. I mean,
I find it funny to hear about low code these days.
Well, this is the thing that we keep saying, because the point is, you know, obviously, you know, it would be difficult for you to go to the blog and not see us mention low code. But the reason is, if it's something you're good at, you flaunt it. I mean, you know, if you are you know, good at swimming, you're going to impress people by swimming. If you're good at cooking, you cook for people. If you're good at doing low code development, then you talk about the fact you're good at doing low code development, and that's what we do. You know, I think we're probably preaching to converted, because most of the people watching this are probably Delphi people, but so they don't need to be convinced why they should have Delphi. The people are not prepared to consider Delphi, and you say, but you're doing it this way, and it's so much extra work. Let me show you what I can do with the Delphi program and a set components. Oh, well, I would have to pay for the components. You pay $100 to $200 for the components. How much are you going to pay your contractor to do that work? I can get it done in 4 days. They can get it done in 3 weeks. How much are you paying them? It's cheaper. It's cheaper to do, because I'm not having to write so much code, because it's already done. And most of it is draw stuff on the screen. We were there pretty much the first. You know, Delphi 1 was one of the original low-code tools. I know Visual Basic was also very similar at the time, but Visual Basic went off into the atmosphere and blew up. But we're still around, and we've done nothing but iterate and improve on that, which is why all three of the guys on here, apart from Jim, are MVPs. You know, and Jim was a big champion of Delphi before he worked for Embarcadero. But you know, we keep saying to people, this is the way to write code, and the way to write code is
I find it funny because I'm old enough to see things repeating and repeating.
Yeah,
so it's always new hype names for the same thing. So I remember the Delphi community was mocked by other development communities because, well, Delphi is not a development tool. You do not code. It's just drag and drop. That's not coding and things like that. And I'm doing JavaScript here and Java, and this is how we code, etc.
These are the kind of
and then suddenly low code is the new thing, which was Delphi 1. The idea of Delphi 1 was a kind of low code. That's So
Well,
things
these
are
are the kind of
required.
people that obviously want to do everything the hard way. So you think, well, if you want to make your life difficult, go ahead. I mean, you can drive down the road blindfold if you want to, but it's probably safer if you actually do it the easy way and look where you're going. And this is the thing about, Delphi. It's extremely frustrating for people who just dismiss Delphi without even trying it. Oh, no, it's Delphi, it's Pascal. Try it, be quiet and try it. Because if you sit down and you actually, I mean, I can say this kind of thing because I'm 6'2" and a big guy. Try Delphi or else. but I mean, it is incredibly frustrating, and luckily there are younger people coming along who carry this sword. Ironically, Holger's one of the younger people, but Glenn is also younger as well. There are some people that actually get it, and we're doing our best as MVPs to try and explain why. I mean, I can tell you now, if I didn't believe in Delphi, I would not be doing what I'm doing, because I could not push forward something that I didn't believe in. I can talk nonsense for a long time, but even I eventually have to have some kind of substance to lay all that on top of, and this is what I'm talking about. So, can I just ask? They've got some questions. One of them is from Danny Wind. We all know Danny, very good developer. He's saying, what are our thoughts on Azure OpenID? I have to say I've not used it, so I don't know. Anybody else used it at all?
I have not used Azure OpenID. I've used OpenID before, and I like the idea of it. Honestly, I've not seen the Azure one though, but it's something I'm going to look at. I think OpenID is a good idea. It's a federated login, like single sign-on type thing. So it's if you're inside a company, right, you would have like Active Directory or whatever. OpenID is kind of similar to provide that ability to, except it could be across multiple websites or whatever. It used to be really big. So it was really big for a while, and then Microsoft and Google and everybody else started saying, oh, well, you can use our services to provide that same thing, and so people can log in with their existing accounts. And that's true, and actually those are kind of based on OpenID, but the problem with those is that, let's say you go to, it's the tracking thing. I guess this is the tinfoil hat part of the conversation, but there was actually a article a while back where some company was using GitHub for, I think it was GitHub. No, it was Google. Anyway, they're using Google, had Google sign in on their site, so people could come there and sign in with Google. And so Google was able to see how many people were using their service, because everybody that signed into it used Google, and they could see who their customers were. And Google said, hey, they're a competitor, we should buy them because they're getting a lot of customers, and they could see that, and they just went and bought them. Now, maybe you want to get bought by Google, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, but it's one of those things that you need to be aware of, that if you're using one of these other services instead of straight up OpenID, then you are giving them information from your everybody that visits your service. But yeah, this looks interesting. I'll have to check it out.
Pat Dara says, assembler is low code. Pat, I think you're being naughty there. I think you mean low level code. Nice try though.
I was going to actually comment on the low code thing. So Idera acquired Lanza a couple of years ago now, maybe a year ago, and I actually got on it. As soon as I saw the news that was coming, I got on and was chatting with Otness, and I'm like, Lanza looks like Delphi with more steps. No, with more restrictions. And he said that the difference is that Lanza is or Delphi is low code for people that want to be able to write code, right? Lanza is low code for people that don't want to have to ever write code. I mean, you can still write code in Lanza, but the idea is that, and that's actually a really, I think, important differentiation between Delphi and traditional low code, is that Delphi is written in Delphi all the way down, right? And so every component, so occasionally I'll get someone that's like, hey, I want to do X, and I'm like, oh, TMS is a component for that. No, I don't want to buy TMS as a component. I want to just do it with Delphi. I'm like, TMS's components are written in Delphi, so you can write all that yourself, like, no, I want to have it built in. I'm like, well, it is built in. It just depends on how much code do you want to write. Do you want to write a lot of code, or do you want to pay TMS a little money? And so that's kind of the difference. But yeah, so Delphi is low code, but it's also for programmers that want to be able to write code and don't want to ever be locked into, restricted too much. Honestly, I think
wasn't there a slogan that in the beginning that Delphi is the easy of Visual Basic and the power of C?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I had a friend that used to work for a company that was a VB consulting shop, and he was one of 2 Delphi developers, and they had 100 VB developers. And his job, and this other Delphi developer's job, was to make all the ActiveX components that the VB apps would use. And so the VB developers were doing integration, and he and this other guy were writing the components, the functionality, the deep, powerful stuff that was being used by the VB. And he kept going to the manager and like, we can lay off all these VB guys and hire a couple more Delphi developers and be done. We don't need it. Like, no, we're a VB shop. So anyway, again, as Ian said, we're preaching to the choir.
In fact, someone just said, oh, you can't get many Delphi developers, blah, 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 blah. There's plenty around. You just need to look a bit harder. If you put a advert up for a Delphi developer, you will get people apply for it. And I mean, all right, I accept there are probably more C# developers in the world and probably more Python developers easily in the world, but the Delphi is, the problem that Delphi has is it's too good at doing things and keeping quiet about it and not making a fuss about it. I keep saying to people, you write a Delphi program, because I write Delphi programs that are mass market and used by thousands of companies with millions of employees and stuff like that overall. And the reason we use Delphi is, first of all, I know it very well, and secondly, because it works and keeps on working. We can deploy the applications with minimal runtimes, in fact, no runtimes in most cases, minimal drivers, mostly no drivers, to any form of customer, small customers, big corporates, blue chip companies, embassies, airports. 112 Airport runs on Delphi programs. I know it's an obscure place, but just the one I can remember off the top of my head. Brazilian embassy, a few other places like that. So, those apps work and they keep on working without lots of trouble. That's why we choose Delphi. More people should stop believing the hype and saying, oh, well, C# this and sort of. I will give you, anybody that wants to be convinced why you are going in the wrong direction if you're not thinking about using Delphi, I'm quite happy to spend some time. I'll do a Skype chat with you if you need to. I will genuinely tell you why I think you're better off going with Delphi. And if you don't believe me, then you've lost nothing. I'm not charging you anything. I don't want your work. I've got plenty of work. I just want to say, stop being silly. Don't go in that direction. Here's why. And prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Show me your solution, why it's better, and you may be right. Delphi's not always going to be the answer, but 99.9% of the time it is the answer. Trust me, and we all think so. That's why we're here. So, yeah.
So I'm just put some more links in the chat here. This is a blog post that migration to the cloud. It covers both Azure and AWS, but it does cover Azure as well. So definitely check this out. From Softcom, which is Sergi. And I put also a link in for this Azure REST example here as well. Oh, cool. So David Morehouse is saying OIDC is very cool, much easier than SAML.
Right.
I will need to check that out.
My dog is doing yoga behind me. I'm not quite sure what he's doing. Calm down, dog.
So my daughter has a cat, and usually the cat is in her room. He's not supposed to roam the entire house, but occasionally he'll get out. The other day I was doing a webinar, and also I'm like, what in the world? And I looked down, and sure enough, the cat was actually, he came by and brushed by my leg and then hid. And I'm like, I swear the cat was in here, but I can't find it now.
There's a creature in the house. It's coming to get me. You should have picked it up. If it's a white cat, because Glenn has a white cat, you should pick it up and stroke it like some Bond villain. Go, yes.
He did come out, and I eventually grabbed him and did that. But
Cool.
although actually this is completely off topic, but the craziest thing that happened one time, I was in a, I think I was just talking with somebody. I don't think it was a webinar. I was doing a video chat with somebody, and I felt like something was on my leg. I was wearing shorts, and I'm like, no, okay. And then I went to the next call, and then I felt it again. And I'm like, man, what's going on? Why does it feel like there's something on my leg? I looked down, and I had a millipede, one of those big old long. No, it was a centipede. Big old, and I'm like, it had just been running around on my legs apparently, and I didn't notice it. That was really freaky.
Yeah, always be careful that run around in Texas, because many of them will kill you. Kill you, bite you, or eat something else that's about to bite you. It just depends how lucky you are. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Ken's asking if there's a good VB6 to Delphi converter. I've seen a few.
His name's probably Darren.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, my name's Darren. I convert VB code to Delphi.
Yeah, so you're somebody that specializes in that.
It's not that difficult. I mean, there are similarities, but the problem with VB, certainly older VB code, rather than VB.net or whatever it's called nowadays. I occasionally have to work on VB programs, unfortunately, but certainly VB6 ruled the roost. It was extremely popular and very widely adopted, and I've worked on big systems that use VB6 in the background, and it does things in a VB kind of way that if you were translating it directly into Delphi, you'd end up with a framework that might work in Delphi, but actually it would not be a very good solution. It'd be better to use the Delphi as the VB as a kind of template, of what you wanted. If that application works fine, use that as a template and then code from scratch, because unless it's absolutely enormous, it's probably going to be quicker to write the code, visually translating it, and having a think about the structures and stuff like that you want to do. VB was not a great language, and it's why it's basically disappeared. You can use reflection. If it's .NET, you can reflect it into C#, and there are C# converters that go one way or the other. So
yeah. Actually, I was going to mention another. Here we go. Tech partner. So REM Objects has added to Elements Mercury, which is a Visual Basic. So you can use this with the. So Oxygen is a Delphi-like, Delphi compatible, semi-Delphi compatible language. Mercury is VB compatible. Then you can get their Hydra and build them all together into one, integrate them. The other option would be to take the VB app and then turn it into ActiveX components, parts of the VB app and turn it into ActiveX components, and then consume that from Delphi as well. So there's lots of ways you can iteratively go through it as far as doing things.
Yeah. Don Potts, who is one of our frequent flyers. Hello, Don. By that, I mean he's always here. He asked a question which I can actually directly answer because I have it behind me. He said, Delphi on Amazon Fire OS. Okay. Well, I guarantee it works because here in the background is an Amazon tablet. I think it's in show mode, so I might be able to show it directly, but see, now I can't do it off the top of my head, but yeah, I need to turn it off in show mode. But that is an Amazon Fire HD10, I think, and it's got the latest version of Amazon on it, and that runs Delphi fine. I have Delphi applications running on there. You need to put them across using the USB bridge, and treat it as if it's an Android tablet, and it'll work absolutely fine.
Works,
you know,
works
you need
fine
to
with the
look some-
Fire TV too. Fire TV. I mean, if you want to do signage, you know, Fire TV is not that expensive. And the only thing I haven't figured out, because I literally don't want to spend any time on it, is the Fire TV has a remote and not a keyboard. So you have to think about how you do navigation in your app, but it works fine on a Fire TV. So I deployed like a Google map on Fire TV, and then I put a couple of points of interest on the map, all in a Delphi app, and it looks great on a TV. You know, the only thing you have to put your mind to is how to incorporate the remote. I would think the remote sense, you can test that easily by creating a FireMonkey application, and then look what kind of key codes are being sent if you press certain keys on your remote, and then you're ready to go. You know. And it works great, and it's easy. As Ian just said, just consider it an Android device, and that's the way to go.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have actually removed the app off there, but I can promise you it definitely does work on Amazon. It's one of the things, I actually use that tablet to demonstrate to people Amazon tablet apps, because it's a cheap tablet and it's got multiple uses. It's a Kindle Fire HD10. And if you Google it, it's like last year's model or something, but I absolutely, it definitely works. So that's a nice answer to be able to give to people. Yes, it will work. I don't think it's officially supported by Embarcadero, but if it works, it works, you know. And I've written.
It is officially supported. It's officially supported.
Yeah, and that's going to become more relevant to people because Windows 11, which comes out, I think, tomorrow or day after. No, sometime this week anyway.
October 5th is Windows 11.
Oh, yes, that's right. I don't know why I got it in my mind. It was September, but that comes with the Amazon App Store, which will then allow your applications to run let's get this right. It will allow you to run Android applications on your Windows machine as if they're native apps. They'll look like they're in a window and things like that, but they will work. And we're not quite sure what the kind of impact will be, but I've run Android apps that are Delphi apps that are installed on that tablet in a window on my machine here. And also I have a Samsung Galaxy 10 Note 10 phone with Delphi apps on it. And they are able to run it in the My Phone app, which is Delphi's, Microsoft's little bridge between Android and Windows, and it works absolutely fine. So, you know, I think it's one of those things that it's worth playing around with and seeing. I'm just going to see if I can find my little test app here, just to show people that it works. There we go. So, where's my camera? There it is. So this is, you can't see it very well because the shiny it on too much. Yeah, do that. That's it. So this is a Delphi app, and it's running on Android Note. And if I go into my phone app, I could actually, I'm not going to show my screen because I've got too many things on it, but if I go into my phone app and click on my phone app, that same app that is running here on the Android device will actually show up in a window on my Windows 10 machine, and it does the same thing on Windows 11. So, you know, it's not, by the way, it's not Azure related, but it was just came up in the question, so it's worth talking about. Yeah, I like it. I still think Delphi is the sensible choice. I really do think people should get a grip and start realizing that a bit more.
All right, so it's we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Covered a lot of things here around Azure and Azure specifically. There are a few more questions here. I'm going to try to dive into those well. There is I do want to just real quick say. Oh, so actually, I should do this. We have tomorrow is the sneak peek for RAD Studio 11. So definitely, if you're not registered for that, register for that now. You want to be on that webinar. It happens 3 times, so you can join the time that fits best for you. So yeah, it's the same content 3 different times for different time zones. So definitely don't register for that if you're not on already, and join us tomorrow. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is just that we have one more on this GoToWebinar series, and after that we're switching to a YouTube stream. So I'll be posting on the blogs.Embarcadero about that as well.
We're going to be YouTube stars. Hurrah! Does that make us influencers? Do we have to wear like special filters and stuff?
So Chris is saying he's looking at the doc wiki on Azure, but doesn't see anything about the SAML. Let me look. That's not the right one. No, there isn't on here. So either you have to implement that yourself or find a third-party component. It doesn't look like that's in there for that. Somebody's messaging me. I'm not sure. Hopefully that's not important. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, I'll get to that afterwards. I noticed that my Skype all of a sudden starts blowing up. Apparently I've got like a dozen conversations coming in.
Cool.
Yeah.
All I've got is lunch coming in about 10 minutes.
Oh wow.
Hulk
That sounds awesome.
You see, Hulk has got away with it scot-free. He's got no camera on, so we don't know what he's doing. He'd be sitting in his hot tub out in the backyard for all we know.
You caught me. You caught me.
You Florida boy.
Man, we need to do that. We need to do a hot tub or I don't know.
I'm not sure if people want to see that really.
Yeah, that's true. I was just thinking about that.
Increase your viewership.
Just talking about the technical stuff, because like of all the humidity and steam, I don't know how that will work out.
Yeah, it might be. My glasses would steam up. I'd probably have to take them off, and then I can't see anything. So my dog's not really qualified as a guide dog. He's more of a terrier.
And right now it's well over 100 degrees out. I don't know if I want to be sitting in a hot tub.
It's 82 for us, but then it's cooled down because it rains. So the rest of the world's going, what? What does that mean? It's about 35 centigrade or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. 30, 35, 33.
Yeah. It's been weird.
Of course, Wagner's in the southern hemisphere, so you're at the other side of the
He's in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but it's. I'm using shorts as well. It's warm here. Finally. I'm in South Brazil, so winters can be a little bit cold here as well.
We had one in February in Texas, and it took everybody by surprise. Nobody knew what to do. What's this white stuff? Oh, it's snow. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not really what we do.
So as far as authentication goes, there is a Azure authentication here. So let me put that in here for you, Chris. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just trying to go through the questions here and make sure I'm not missing anything.
Kirk used to work in a hot tub factory. Whoa. If we have any hot tub questions next time, we can ask Kirk.
Someone asked, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, so thank you, everybody. We'll go through real quick. Holger, anything you want to say real quick before we go? Remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, it's as always, it's flixengineering.com. And practical examples, I stayed away from it during the webinar today to advertise my books, but practical hands-on examples also with cloud computing in the books, and they're available on Amazon if you haven't ordered them yet.
Very good books. Definitely.
Never be afraid to promote your books on one of these calls, Holger. Honestly, it's like if people should be buying the books, because in my opinion, if you read one chapter of a book and it's useful, you probably paid for the book, realistically. Because at least I don't frequently don't finish. Here, I'll just flip your webpage here. I frequently don't read an entire book, but I will definitely skim it. And they're usually it's like, oh, that's great. And I can't take more than once. I've been talking to somebody, and they're like, ask a question, and I was like trying to answer it. I'm like, someone has so-and-so has a book on this, and like, okay, I'll check it out. And then later they'll be like, oh, I started reading that book. I should have read this before I began.
One of the questioners is asking whether they can contact me via email about some questions, and I'm going to put my email in the window because I get a very good spam filter. But go ahead. You're always welcome to ask me questions. The thing I will tell anybody that comes and asks me questions is that I reserve the right not to get back to you. and if you ask me too many questions, eventually I'll pretend that your email didn't reach me. But apart from that, ask away, because it's all about Delphi. It's all about encouraging people to use Delphi and helping people use Delphi and spreading the conversation of Delphi. So go ahead and contact me. Email's the easiest way. I can't guarantee I'll reply, and I can't guarantee how long it takes me to reply, but I will reply eventually, probably. That's what I can say.
When you get caught up, maybe you can help me catch up on my inbox.
Yeah.
So Wagner has a webinar tomorrow, the 9th at 4 p.m. UTC, which is 10 a.m. my time, it says. I'm not sure. That's pretty awesome that it gave me a local time. What's the webinar on tomorrow, Wagner?
Yeah, we're talking about testing TMS business. There is a series of webinars that I try to be a little bit more like coffee and code. It's like talking about the TMS business behind the scenes, the development stuff, what it's coming, and also how things are done. So for example, tomorrow I'll talk a little bit about the testing, how the testing, unit testing, integration testing we do with TMS business and Aurelius especially, and the tools we use, how we structure our tests, if you're interested in knowing and talking more about testing and how test-driven development helped a lot in the development. So tomorrow, a free webinar. I'll be glad if you can join us. There is the link that Jim opened there is in the chat. And thank you again for inviting me, and it was a pleasure to be here as usual.
Absolutely, I appreciate having you. All right, well, thank you everybody for being on.
One more thing, we have Code Rage Germany tomorrow from Embarcadero. I almost forgot. It's
Jim,
Code
how
Rage.
did you mention it? Code Rage.
Yes, no, that's 2021. You have to. It's Deutschland. You have to type Deutschland, otherwise you don't find it. DEU.
I don't know how to spell Deutschland.
Okay, good.
DEU.
DEU. TSCH. SCH and LAND. Yes, and then 2021. Yeah. Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
And that's tomorrow at the same time when the other things are going on.
Oh, that's interesting. It's a busy day tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a busy day for Embarcadero tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. I see a lot of good sessions. I need to learn German, man.
Yeah, I'm doing together with Olaf, I'm doing one about Docker for Delphi developers, just a general overview, why Docker might be the thing for you. And then in the evening, I'm going to do a basic getting started with web development in Delphi with TMS Web Core. And yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, if you're German, I know where, if you understand German, that's where you should be tomorrow. And if you don't know German, you still have time to learn. Come on.
They have replays as well.
Yeah, it's easy language. It's just straightforward, really. Just put all
you
the
know what
you've got on your Scrabble board and put them in one place, and you've got a word. There you go.
Have you seen this Microsoft Translator?
Have you seen the app that you can get for it?
Yeah, I was using this during the Learn to Code summer camp. So what I found was the best is I installed the app on my phone and then just set it on my desk, and I would create a room, and then I just give people the link to the room, and they could log in and select what language they wanted to give it to them, and it would do real-time translation for them.
They have an
Yeah.
app, and you can say, "Hello, my name is Ian." Oh, it's too. She thinks my name is AM.
Works great.
Programming.
It does a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but it actually does a pretty good job. So in theory, you could use this to go to Code Rage Germany tomorrow.
Very
All right.
useful in Texas because of the big Hispanic population, so Spanish speaking.
All right. Apparently, I need to go. I have another meeting that I just found out about that's starting right now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye, guys. Thank you.